They say silence is golden, but when a loyal woman goes quiet, it's a storm held within. A woman who once loved loudly, defended fiercely, and stood beside him through his darkest hours. When she finally goes silent, it's not because she has nothing to say. It's because she has said everything. And now, her silence screams the truth he never wanted to hear. They say the quiet ones are the most dangerous, not because they act out, but because their silence is a final decision. When a woman who once gave her heart, her energy, and her unwavering loyalty goes silent, the world doesn't always understand what that means, but she does. Deep within, she knows that silence isn't emptiness. It's everything she wanted to say but no longer feels the need to explain. She remembers the nights she stayed up questioning herself, wondering where she went wrong, trying to fix what she didn't break. She remembers how she once used her words as shields, defending, clarifying, and fighting for a connection that was slowly slipping through her fingers. She tried to be heard. She tried to be seen. She tried to love harder, thinking that loyalty meant never giving up even when she was hurting. But there comes a time when a woman, even the most loyal one, becomes exhausted, not physically, but emotionally. She grows tired of explaining the same things over and over, tired of feeling like her voice only echoes back to her. And so, she stops. Not because she has nothing more to say, but because she finally realizes that her peace is more important than proving a point. That's when silence becomes her rebellion. Not the kind that's loud and chaotic, but the kind that settles in, like the calm after a storm. The kind that's filled with lessons and resolve. She used to love loudly. Her love was in the details, the thoughtful messages, the quiet support, the way she stood by someone even when it hurt. Her loyalty wasn't conditional. She believed in staying. She believed in building, even when the foundation was cracking. Her love wasn't based on perfection. It was based on effort, trust, and hope. But when her loyalty was met with disregard, when her kindness was mistaken for weakness, when her voice was drowned out by excuses and selfishness, something inside her began to shift. She didn't stop loving overnight. That's not how it works for someone who's loyal to the core. No. She held on longer than she should have. She gave second chances, and third, and maybe even more, thinking that love was about patience and forgiveness. She told herself that if she just loved a little more, gave a little more, waited a little longer, things would get better. But instead, what she got in return was silence of a different kind. Silence in response to her tears. Silence to her needs. Silence when she needed reassurance the most. That silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt like abandonment. And it taught her the hardest lesson of all, that not everyone deserves the kind of love she gives so freely. But still, she stayed for a while. Because loyal women always do. They try, and try again, even when it's tearing them apart inside. They make excuses not for themselves, but for others. They see potential when others only show patterns. But the heart can only take so much. Eventually, the pain outweighs the hope. Eventually, the silence she used to fear becomes the silence she chooses. And when she does, that silence is deafening. People think silence means giving up. But in her case, silence is survival. It's healing. It's saying, I've said all I can say. I've done all I can do. Now, I choose me. That silence is sacred. It's where she begins to rebuild the parts of herself she gave away. It's where she realizes that love shouldn't come at the cost of her self-worth. And in that silence, she begins to find clarity. She starts to hear her own voice again, the one that was silenced by compromise and conflict. She remembers who she was before she became exhausted by trying to matter. She remembers what it feels like to breathe without tension, to sleep without crying, to smile without faking it. That silence is not just absence. It's rebirth. It's her rewriting the story that used to revolve around someone else's needs, and instead, centering it on her own healing. The world may not understand the depth of her quiet. They may think she moved on too quickly, or that she didn't care enough. But they didn't see the battle she fought in private. They didn't hear the words she whispered into the void, hoping for answers that never came. They didn't feel the weight of the tears she cried behind closed doors. Her silence now isn't because she's cold, it's because she's finally warm with the truth. The truth that staying loyal to someone who doesn't value it isn't noble, it's self-destruction. And she's done with sacrificing her peace for the sake of being understood by someone who never really tried to understand her in the first place. And so, she moves differently now. Not bitter, not broken but wiser. She no longer fights to prove her loyalty. She no longer argues to be right. She no longer stays where she isn't emotionally safe. Her silence isn't a weapon, it's a boundary. It's her saying, I deserve more than this, and I won't settle for less anymore. And the irony is, the same silence that was once ignored is now missed. That same quiet that was once taken for granted becomes the loudest absence. Because a loyal woman's presence is powerful but her absence is unforgettable. The truth is, loyal women don't fall out of love quickly. They don't stop caring just because things get tough. They carry love in their bones, in their habits, in the way they show up even when they're hurting. But when they've been hurt enough, when their love has been met with lies, disrespect, or emotional neglect, they reach a breaking point. And unlike others, they don't lash out. They don't scream or cause chaos. They simply go quiet. Because they know that real strength isn't in how loudly you fight, it's in how gracefully you walk away. That silence becomes her declaration. It says, I see the truth now. I see what I deserve. And I won't waste another word, another tear, another ounce of my soul begging for something that should have been freely given. That kind of silence, it changes her. It liberates her. And it teaches anyone who ever underestimated her that the most dangerous kind of woman isn't the loud one, it's the one who chooses peace over pain. The one who, despite all odds, still believes in love but refuses to settle for anything less than what she knows in her heart she's worth. Her silence is not the end of her story. It's the beginning of a new chapter, one where she writes her own narrative, where she is no longer a footnote in someone else's life, but the author of her own. It's in that silence that she blossoms, not because she forgot how to speak, but because she finally chose to listen to herself, to her intuition, to her truth. And in that quiet, she finds everything she thought she had lost: strength, dignity, peace, and a love for herself so deep it cannot be shaken again. That is the power of a loyal woman's silence. It does not beg. It does not chase. It simply walks away, and in doing so, says everything that needs to be heard. When a woman who once gave everything finally walks away in silence, the absence she leaves behind doesn't echo, it roars. The world might not feel it immediately, but the one who once lived in the warmth of her presence begins to feel the chill that silence brings. She was the kind of woman who loved without limits, stood firm through every storm, and offered her soul when it was never required. And now, where there was once constant reassurance, gentle reminders, and a steady love, there is nothing but stillness. That stillness is not empty, it is loaded with meaning. Because her absence is not just a lack of her physical presence, it is the loss of her spirit, her energy, her grace, and her irreplaceable loyalty. The space she once filled begins to whisper all the words she no longer says. The home she made in someone's heart now echoes with the sound of her footsteps leaving. And there's no silence quite like the one that follows a woman who truly loved. It's not loud, but it lingers in every forgotten detail, in the untouched messages, in the moments that were once filled with her laughter, in the decisions that used to be shared, in the comfort of knowing someone had your back no matter what. That comfort becomes a memory, and memories don't always bring warmth, they bring reminders. Reminders of how she tried, how she stayed, how she loved, and how she was left with no choice but to go. Her absence becomes the mirror that reflects everything that was ignored when she was still present. All the chances she gave, all the kindness that went unnoticed, all the time and energy she poured into love that wasn't matched. And suddenly, that silence starts to speak, not through words, but through the void she left behind. It says, this is what it feels like to lose someone who gave you everything. It's not revenge. It's not cruelty. It's consequence. Not because she wanted to be missed, but because she simply refused to keep giving herself away to someone who never truly held her heart with care. There is something deeply powerful in the way she lets go, not with bitterness, but with clarity. Not with shouting, but with resolve. Because loyal women don't walk away impulsively. They walk away when every fiber of their being has tried to hold on. When their heart has finally accepted what their mind has known for too long. And in that moment, something within her shifts. The tears that once felt endless begin to dry. The ache that consumed her chest begins to fade. And in the quiet of her own healing, she begins to see herself again, not as someone who failed, but as someone who survived. That's where the transformation begins. Not in seeking revenge or closure, but in choosing herself. For the first time in a long time, she turns her attention inward. She begins to give herself the love she kept giving away. She doesn't need permission to heal. She doesn't wait for apologies that may never come. She doesn't hold on to hope wrapped in empty promises. Instead, she creates her own peace. She reclaims her space. She rewrites the narrative that once told her she wasn't enough. Because she's more than enough, she's everything she thought she needed from someone else. Healing doesn't happen overnight, but day by day, she rises. She stops checking messages that never come. She stops wondering if someone misses her. She stops replaying conversations in her mind, trying to find the moment it all started to fall apart. Because now, her focus is no longer on what she lost, it's on what she's rebuilding. She finds beauty in the quiet mornings, in her own company, in the things that once brought her joy. She rediscovers her passions. She listens to the voice within her that was once drowned out by noise. And most importantly, she begins to believe in love again, not the kind that hurts or confuses, but the kind that starts from within. She becomes her own anchor, her own protector, her own home. And in doing so, she learns the most valuable lesson of all, that true loyalty begins with being loyal to herself. No more pouring from an empty cup. No more staying to prove her worth. No more shrinking to be accepted. She rises not to show the world who she is, but to remind herself of the power that was always there. And perhaps the most painful truth is this: those who once had her, who once tasted her loyalty and basked in her presence, will feel the weight of her absence long after she's gone. They'll try to revisit memories, to replay old moments, to wonder if it could have been different. They'll remember how she made them feel seen, heard, loved without ever asking for much in return. And they'll come to understand that what they lost wasn't just a person, it was a rare kind of love that doesn't come twice. But by then, she won't be the same woman. She won't be waiting for a knock on the door, or a message, or an apology. She'll be far from the version of herself that begged to be understood. She will have grown into someone who knows her value so deeply, she'll never again accept anything less than she deserves. The pain that once made her question her worth will become the fire that fuels her confidence. The silence that once felt like heartbreak will become the foundation of her strength. And while others may regret losing her, she will not regret walking away. Because she didn't lose anything, she found herself. She found peace in choosing silence over chaos. She found strength in letting go with grace. She found clarity in the absence of noise. And most of all, she found the kind of love that no one could ever take away again, the love she gave back to herself. So if you ever wonder what it looks like when a loyal woman finally stops speaking, it looks like freedom. It looks like healing. It looks like someone who has walked through fire and emerged untouched. Her silence may have been born from pain, but it grows into power. And once she rises in that power, nothing can pull her back into the darkness she fought so hard to escape. She becomes untouchable not because she's hardened, but because she's whole. And there is nothing more dangerous, more breathtaking, or more inspiring than a woman who has loved deeply, lost gracefully, and returned to herself completely. Her silence was never weakness. It was a decision, a turning point, a rebirth. And now, she no longer speaks to be heard, she simply lives to be free.